Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 194 of a year of change. Today, I know that normally on Wednesdays we do like a news story or a study that's been done, sort of keeping in line with what we're looking at for the week. I want to sort of stay in that vein where we're going to be providing some information, but it's going to be a little bit different. At the beginning of the week when we first started tracking this, the main goal of this week is just to become a little more aware of how much sugar we're taking in. And this might get a little conspiracy theory-ish, just so you know. But the majority of us, we're eating somewhere between, well, the average person anyway, should be getting anywhere between 6 and 9 teaspoons of sugar a day at the upper limit. It's not really a recommended daily amount because the amount of sugar that we're getting from just regular foods is more than enough. There's no really dietary recommendation for saying, well, you also need to have this much sugar. Our body does need it, but we get more than we need from pretty much any food out there. All that sugar does, it just gives us that quick little burst of energy and then it's gone. It doesn't, unless we don't do anything, in which case it gets converted and just turns into fat. But completely lost my train of thought already. The average person right now is eating anywhere between 20 and 25 teaspoons a day on top of all the other food that we're taking in. And the majority of that is because of just what we're eating, the added sugar that goes on top of stuff. Not necessarily stuff that you would put on your cereal or in your coffee or things like that, although that does add to it. If I'm having 3 or 4 coffees in the run of a day, and even if I'm just having 1 pack of sugar in there, that's an additional 4 teaspoons. So just in coffee, I'm having almost half of what my upper limit should be for the day, on top of everything else that I'm having with food. So now the thing is with sugar is that your body processes it exactly the same way, whether it comes from an apple or a banana or grapes or anything else, as it does from a Twinkie. And the difference is, the reason why we're sort of leaning more towards the fruit and vegetables and stuff like that to get your sugar is because at least you're getting something else along with it. You're getting fiber and you're getting vitamins and you're getting, little bit like iron and manganese and all the other stuff that you need. As opposed to a Twinkie where it's pretty much just sugar and fat. We know this. This isn't anything that's new, by the way. But the problem is that we don't often see it in a lot of the stuff that we think is better for us. Not necessarily just health foods, although health foods are pretty bad for this as well. But they never really just put sugar at the top of the list. There are a bunch of different names that they can go under. And the problem with that is that, we've all sort of gotten to understand that when you're looking at a list of ingredients, that the most common ingredient is at the very top, and then as they sort of diminish, they go down towards the bottom of the list until you get to the bottom, and that's usually where you find things like artificial coloring and artificial flavoring and stuff like that, because it takes very, very small amounts to do it. But generally speaking, if you're looking through it, sugar is usually thrown in there somewhere, and you'll see it, or you'll see high fructose corn syrup, or you'll see something like that. And so generally that gives us an idea, and we think, okay, well, it's not too bad. It's halfway down, so it should be okay as compared to something that just says sugar at the top. The problem is, though, is that that's not the only source of sugar that's in that. And if you've been looking at your labels a little more closely this week, I'm going to bugger that one up. If you have been looking at your labels a little more closely, this week, then you'll notice that sugar is very rarely at the very, very top. But you may have noticed a few things that are sort of poked in there, and you think, glucose, that's a sugar, fructose, that's a sugar, stuff like that. But there are a myriad of other things that are stuck in there as well that are the exact same thing. So these are just a few of the names that sugar can go by. And some of them you don't even recognize as sugar. And the problem is that manufacturers know this. And health foods are actually fairly bad for this as well. When you go into a health food store and you look at, just grab a granola bar or something, that they know that if you put sugar at the very, very top, people aren't going to buy it. Because when you're going in, you're thinking, I want something that's going to be healthy. And so you take a look at the ingredients, and it's probably going to be in there somewhere. If they're very smart, they won't put any in there. But generally speaking, you know that anything, if sugar is at the very top, it's not good for you. The thing is, though, is that if you've got 8 or 9 different ingredients that are thrown in there, and they're all sugar, your body doesn't know the difference. Your liver is still going to process it exactly the same way, and if there's too much and you're not burning it off, it's going to store it as fat. Yeah, starting to choke there. So the manufacturers know this, and this isn't going to be some big sinister thing. It's just that they know that you're not going to buy it if they just put sugar at the very, very top. For the same reason why you have other products that are out there that are just very simple that have this huge long name, and the same reason why people lie on the resume and say, oh, I was a ceramic sanitation engineer, which is essentially a dishwasher, which is exactly this. That actually was on someone's resume. You can go look up the names on resumes. It's great. So it's the same sort of thought process behind that. So when you're looking at a list of ingredients and you see things like barley malt or Florida crystals is another really weird one that just sort of comes out of nowhere. Dextrin is another one. Maltodextrin, or was it? Yeah, I think that's it. Maltodextrin. These are things that you don't look at and think, oh, well, that's obviously sugar, because it doesn't trigger that in you. If it was something that says syrup, any sort of syrup, you kind of get the idea. They'll throw in honey there as well because you think, oh, well, it's natural, it's honey, it's okay. It's still sugar. It's still exactly the same thing. Or agave syrup, or just agave, or agave nectar sometimes. It's still the exact same thing. It's almost entirely sugar. So when they've added these in, there's 5 or 6 different ingredients, and they can throw them in wherever they need to because they can say, okay, well, here's the amount that was honey. So we'll put a little more honey than anything else in there because people are going to think, okay, it's natural, it's better for me, this is good, so we can put that near the top. Maltodextrin, we're going to put that somewhere near the bottom because people don't understand what it is, but they see it in foods all the time, so we can throw that in pretty much anywhere that we want. Barley malt is another one that really sort of stands out because it sounds like a grain because you just think barley. But that, again, is just a type of sugar. And whether it's cane sugar or, turbinado sugar, because if you just change the name, people think that it's healthier. Doesn't matter where it is, they can throw in a bunch of different ingredients. So let's say that we've got half a dozen ingredients in there now that are all different types of sugar. And they're thrown in randomly throughout the ingredients wherever their amounts lie. Not really randomly, but in the proper quantities. But when you add all those up, they still end up at the top of the list for the ingredients. And we talked about this before, that there's 2 things that make food taste good: fat and sugar. So if you're cutting out a lot of the fat, which a lot of health food stuff does, you have to put in more sugar, otherwise it tastes like shit, and you're not going to want to eat it. And they know this. So this is sort of a way to get around that. And when you go in and you look at the nutritional label, and it says for a granola bar, 8 grams of sugar, for example, it doesn't really click because there's no percentage on there, which we talked about as well. And we'll actually have quite a few things to say on that. But for now, we're just going to say, we know that there's no percentage on there. The sugar lobbyists, and this is where it's going to start sounding like a conspiracy theory, but it's not. There are lobbyists out there for pretty much everything. Not just tobacco and sugar and everything else, but there's stuff out there for good things, so calm the fuck down. But they fought very, very hard to prevent that percentage from being shown on there because it would almost always be 100% or more. So 8 grams of sugar is 2 teaspoons. So when you're looking at that and you're thinking, okay, well, this is health food, it's this big, and a quarter of it is sugar, then of course you're not going to buy it. But it doesn't trigger that in you. And they know this because very few of us actually look at it and say, okay, well, I know that this is a sugar and this is a sugar and this is a sugar. Unless it actually has the word sugar in it. I mean, there are certain things like dextrose and fructose and glucose and everything else that we sort of recognize, and syrups and things like that. But when you have something like barley malt or maltodextrin, it doesn't click with us that it's just simply sugar. And I mean, there are the complex sugars and there are simple sugars and things like that. But for what we're looking at right now, it's pretty much the same thing across the board. And so when you have a large number of different names for the exact same thing, then it's easy to sort of put them in wherever you need to and say, well, this is where we've put in honey, this is where we've put in barley malt, and this is where we've put in maltodextrin, and this is where we've put in dextrate, or whatever it is. I think it's just dextrate. I'm missing one. Anyway. Or agave, so that when people are looking at it, they think, oh, well, it's a natural sweetener. It's still sugar. It's still the exact same thing. And when you add all those up, you're still just eating a Twinkie. I mean, granted, you're getting some oats and some fiber along with it, so it's still better. But it's really difficult to try to say, yes, it's a health food, when it's essentially just a big oaty Twinkie. So as you've been going through this week, and you've been taking a look at all the different ingredients and stuff in there, there are some of these that are probably going to ring a bell, that you're going to say, I've seen that in there. And when you've been looking at the amount of sugar that's in there and you're converting those over into teaspoons, it probably is going to give you a much better idea just how much added sugar is in there. And before you start panicking and thinking, oh my God, I got to start buying it at specialty stores and everything else, no. The fact is that it's everywhere. You're not going to be able to get away from it entirely. The best that we can really do is to cut back as much as we can and avoid things that we know are just almost all sugar, and which the majority of us have done by now, that because we've been adding in more fruits and vegetables and things like that, and we're trying to eat healthier, we're eating more, the best term I can think of is whole foods, I guess, just natural food, stuff that isn't in a box. I'm trying to avoid sounding like a hippie, and it's not working. You're buying a lot of your stuff from, you're getting fresh produce, you're getting fresh meat, stuff like that. That's going to be cutting back a lot of the sugar anyway. Avoiding fizzy drinks and energy drinks and all the other stuff that we've had in there. And yes, coffee and tea and stuff like that, trying to cut back on little things like that. Not putting sugar in your cereal and looking at the different cereals and trying to cut back on the amount of sugar that's in those. Those are the things that we're going to need to do. You're not going to be able to get away from it all. There's simply too much sugar in too many things. And again, it's okay every once in a while to say, you know what? No, I'm going to have a handful of gummies. Or I'm going to, get a pizza with friends. And if whatever it is, the fact is that it's still better than what we were doing before, which was just eating nonstop crap for just in immense quantities. And that's the thing. We've been making progress as we've been going along, and this is just another facet of that. But so don't think that you're sort of stuck going, I need to just get sugar-free this and sugar-free that, because if you're taking all the sugar out, you've got to add in something. So if it's not artificial sweeteners, which I'm not a big fan of, I'm not saying, oh my God, because it creates formaldehyde in your body, which it does, but it's no more than your body actually produces anyway. So don't worry. If you're into that and you want to go to, if you're into formaldehyde, if you're into that and you think, great, I can just use sweeteners and do the same thing, your body pretty much treats it the same way as sugar anyway. It just is not going to convert it to fat. Then by all means, do it. But when you're looking at the amount of sugar that you're eating in regular food anyway, swapping out one sugar for one sweetener is not going to make that much of a difference. So, again, trying to stay practical with everything that we're trying to do here, and that's a big part of it. So, as you can see, there are a great many names for sugar that you're going to be seeing in your ingredients. And not to sort of put some panic in people that are saying, well, how am I going to cut this out? It's just so that you're aware of it. And it's going to help you in the long run. If you're going and you're saying, well, I've been buying this and this. I was actually, a prime example of this was the cereal that I bought. It's the same cereal I've been having for a long, long time. And calorie-wise, it's great. It's very low in calories. But for each serving, I'm looking at 2, maybe 2.5 teaspoons of sugar on top of it. And, I mean, obviously, I knew there was something in there because it tasted really, really good. But just when we started looking at this, then, yes, it's much higher than it really should be. Which is why I've sort of started cutting back and just putting some raw oats in there. Not quite ready to go just a whole bowl of oats with nothing in it just yet. But progress. As we go, gradually wean myself off that. I don't often drink too many things like fizzy drinks and stuff like that, unless I'm having it with rum. If you're going to have a rum and coke or something, don't just say, okay, well, I still can't have any sugar. So many sugars and alcohol anyway, it won't matter. Have a real one, and you're okay. That's the thing, is that we can't just flat out restrict ourselves from absolutely everything. Right from day one, we've been looking at this and saying we need to have a balanced diet. And part of that is saying, yes, I'm going to have some junk food once in a while. Some of us are not to that point yet. And I'm not saying, okay, well, great, then every Saturday is a cheat day. No, what I mean is that, if you are getting to that point, if you're going to go out with friends or something, or you're just going to go out to a restaurant or something, then you don't go to a restaurant and say, I'm just going to have a garden salad and then a glass of warm lemon water. Have a real meal. Enjoy yourself. It's okay. It's not going to make or break you. We have still made quite a bit of progress. And one meal is not going to kill you for the week. So, and it's just a matter of learning to be able to do that in moderation is going to make things a little better. Anyway, sort of getting on topic there. I'm going to stay on topic with sugar. So, when you're looking at your ingredients list, on top of the nutrition labels, which we sort of looked at the beginning of the week, when you're trying to convert those over into teaspoons, it's going to surprise you when you go in through the ingredients and you start picking out words and saying that's sugar, that's sugar, that's sugar, that's sugar. And just to sort of be a little more aware of the methods that are being used to throw in as much sugar as they can without just flat out saying, okay, sugar is the top ingredient. Because for the vast majority of products, it is way up there. It's in the top 3 or 4 ingredients of almost everything. So the best thing to do is really just to try to make the best choices that you can. Eating a lot more fresh foods. If you are going to eat something out of a box, just take a closer look at it, just so that you're aware. And sometimes even that's enough to go, no, I'm going to throw in the extra 20 minutes of prep time and buy the stuff and just make it myself. Anyway, that was it. I'm going to put a link down below to it's an article from Harvard Health regarding some of the different names that are in there, and just another thing to sort of put some credence behind it, so that it's not just me saying, oh, well, look, I'm just going to put up a list of names, and you'll have to accept that it's true. This is in there as well. And there was actually, there are articles everywhere that you can find. There was one in Prevention Magazine. There was one in Women's Health that you can go and you can find, just showing some of the different names for it. So I can put those up as well, just so that we have them. But I hope that this at least sort of will give you a little bit more information. And that's the main thing with this, is that as long as we have that information, then we can make an informed decision. Hence the term information. That came out weird. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, so once we have that information, then whether or not you decide to take any action on it and say, well, I'm just going to ignore it anyway, or for some of you, you're going to say, good enough, I'm going to pay more attention to it. And especially if there are some of you out there that are diabetic or anything like that, you really need to watch out for it. You're probably already aware of many of the names for it. But if you're taking a look at it that way and saying, okay, well, some of the things that I'm looking at, it may help regulate a few things. Anyway, I'm going to leave this video here. So, thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please poke the like button for me. And in the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.